And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside once again by my co-host, Andrew Johnson. And man, what a week 5 of the NFL we had this past week, Johnson. A couple of high-scoring affair games, which we haven't seen pretty much all season. A great Thursday night game, which is another thing we haven't seen all season as well. We saw the Cowboys with a thrilling come-from-behind win on Sunday Night Football, as well as the Chiefs dominating on Monday night. But usually, Johnson, for us, we usually start our program with, us breaking down some of the games from this past week in the NFL. But as of today, there are some major breaking news in the NFL world that we're going to talk about first before we head into the game slate.
Yeah, breaking news to anyone with with common sense. Robert Saleh has just been let go as head coach of the New York Jets. Hard to believe that a man that had a 35% winning percentage was allowed to coach Aaron Rodgers for more than 10 games. Kind of crazy when you think about this. You had 2 off seasons. The offense through the first 5 weeks of the season showed statistically no improvement to having Zach Wilson under center. Some may argue that he got a raw deal, Robert Saleh, that it's Nathaniel Hackett and his offense that he's responsible for because Robert Saleh was a defensive guy and that's all he could really be accounted for. But yeah, he had to be escorted out of MetLife Stadium earlier today. And
Yeah.
Nick, why don't you take us home?
Yeah, I mean, there's the tale of two sides to this story. Robert Saleh, from what I've seen, he's a great dude. He's a very well-spoken mannered guy.
Yeah, no one's gonna question his ethics or anything
a
like
guy
that.
a guy that you would want to play for most of the time. Now, the issue for the Jets has been a lot of things. The offense of numbers, they just continue to decline. And you would have thought, when they made this move last season for Aaron Rodgers, that this was going to fix the offense. And obviously that hasn't been the case. They're now trying to get Devontae Adams this season to try to fix whatever's going on with the offense. We thought after the New England game on that Thursday a couple weeks ago, we thought, oh, look, this is what the Jets offense is going to look like this season. And then the last 2 games have happened. We'll talk about what happened in their game this past Sunday. You have the game the previous week against the Broncos, which was an atrocity. So you have those 2 games going on. There's been rumors about the locker room in terms of, what's Rodgers' relationship with Saleh. Obviously, cooler heads prevail, and now you see, this firing happening. And again, this is probably a move, Johnson. I think maybe you and I both agree on this, that probably should have happened last offseason. And again, it has nothing really to do with Saleh. It wasn't really working. And if you knew you were going to, after the season they just had with, Rodgers getting hurt, you probably needed a new scheme. You probably needed to hire an offensive-minded head coach to try to fix the offensive problems. But instead, they kept Saleh. And now the biggest problem for the Jets is now their defense is starting to struggle this season. They've had an up and down year so far. And once that happened, that pretty much was the last straw for Woody Johnson and company. They decided to let him go today. A very weird sequence with that happening. Apparently, they did not let him in the building to let him get his stuff, which is not a really good classy move. So I personally don't know how to feel about that.
I
feel
could give you
bad
an
for
answer
Sal.
on that actually.
Yeah, go for it.
So usually from a business standpoint, it's to prevent liability, make sure that the no allegations can be made about the employees, like, oh well, I tripped and fell, now I'm going to sue, yada yada. Someone got into an altercation with me.
Right.
They stole something. Things of that nature. That's what it's kind of used for, just to kind of mitigate risk. So from a liability standpoint, that's why he was escorted by security.
Yeah, so you have that happening. The season as itself has not really gone the Jets' way, and they even said it. Woody Johnson even put it out bluntly, like they're not happy with the results so far this season. They are 2-3 now as of this past Sunday, and they decided to make this move. They now make Jeff Ulbrich their defensive line coach. He's now the interim head coach. He'll probably be the head coach for the rest of the season, and then they'll have to figure out what to do next off season. And I think something also to note of with this move, Johnson, is now, looking at what the Jets internally are going to do, because after this firing, that probably means that a guy like Joe Douglas, their GM, is probably the next man in line where he could potentially get fired at the end of the season. If the Jets don't turn the ship around and make the playoffs at the end of the season, considering what's gone on with Rodgers, what's gone on with Hassan Reddick, where he still has not played a game for this team, and if they're not able to get a Devontae Adams, then Joe Douglas is probably gone as well. Because let's face facts, some of his moves he's done an all right job with that, but drafting guys like Zach Wilson had kind of set the team back a couple years, and that's why they try to get Rodgers to make sure they want to go back even further. But unfortunately, that seems to be the case.
Yeah, and Aaron Rodgers has denied allegations that he spoke to Woody Johnson and he had knowledge of that he was going to be fired. He denies it at this time. Uh, again,
That's
we
It's
this
funny because Woody Johnson said last night he spoke to him.
yeah, he said that he spoke to him, but he didn't speak to him about firing
Right, it wasn't about
Robert
Salah
Saleh. Yeah,
itself.
so
Right,
time will tell.
time definitely will tell in terms of that. So a very interesting next couple of weeks. The Jets have a big primetime game upcoming this weekend, so they really, or I should say this weekend, next Monday. So they have a lot in store for them, but a very interesting, decision to do this 5 games into the season. The last time we saw this happen was Matt Rule back in 2020 when Carolina was 1-4, and obviously that still hasn't been great since that happened. But now for the Jets, I mean, you do this 5 games of the season, like I mentioned, probably should have been done last season. Not Salah back to back 7 and 10 years. You kind of expected this move to happen at some point. I think everyone going into the season expected the move to happen, but they expected this probably at the end of the season if the Jets did not make the playoffs, and they did not want to wait any further. So Salah now becomes is now no longer the head coach. He'll probably become a defensive coordinator once again with a team. Maybe he goes back to a team like San Francisco because he has already ties there. So who knows what happens with that? But the Jets now roll with a new head coach. But as we know, Johnson, that was not the only news that we had today, especially in that AFC East division. And you'll be able to speak to a big testament of this. Drake May is going to get the starting quarterback gig for the New England Patriots upcoming this week when they take on the Houston Texans. So the Patriots go 5 weeks into the season with Jacoby Brissett as the starter. They are currently 1-4 on the season, looking to make a change at that quarterback spot and hopefully try to improve on their offensive numbers. And now they go with the number 3 overall pick, Drake May, out of UNC to try to see if they can fix things.
Yeah, I'm going to say this again. Jacoby Brissett is there to get sacked. That's why he's getting paid this season. And by starting Drake May, this is a utter mistake. I can't believe that this would even be considered.
Yeah, so as a Patriot fan, do you feel concerned that this is happening? Because you saw him at a brief stint on that Thursday night game against the Jets that I mentioned earlier,
It's the
where he
offense. We
played
don't even know if he's going to be good or not. It's the offensive
right.
line, and putting him. It's like I can't even
And you
give
saw
a.
in that game, he got
He got
beat
beat
up
up.
by the Jets for the 2 minutes that he played.
Yeah, it's just you're putting him at a disadvantage. Imagine like telling an Olympic sprinter, like, okay, go out there and do the best you can. And by the way, we're gonna chain a 10 pound ankle weight to you. Go out there and go win a marathon or win a sprint. It's not gonna happen. That's
Yeah.
what you're pretty much doing with Drake May here. So I hope I'm proven wrong, but that's my take.
And listen, you're the mindset that you want this team to be tanking so you can get a guy like Travis Hunter in the draft. So does this make
Yeah,
the
and
Patriots a
because
little bit better? I mean, you at least
that offensive line's not going to win any games,
I
so
think
probably
I
not.
think here's the problem for this move also. It's you want to like for your instance, you would like to have the number 1 pick to get a guy like Hunter, but at the same time you also want to see Drake May develop into a nice quarterback because if not, then you don't want to be in that spot where again and then kind of where the Jets are, where they were with Zach Wilson, where well our guy that we drafted is not looking out too great, so we're gonna have to go after a veteran quarterback, or we're gonna have to draft once again in the top 5 or whatever. So
Yeah, but
that
here's
puts
the
you in an
thing:
interesting
at the
pickle.
end of next season, if Drake May is not performing, they're going to take a quarterback. That's my take.
You can see me that quick.
I think it will be that quick because if
I
he's starting now, it's going to be 11 games. It's going to be almost 30 games.
was it that quick with because Mac Jones was the same thing, right?
Mac
He was pretty
Jones
quick.
was Mac Jones probably was 40 games. Bryce Young was like 18. But you can't say that maybe 2 full
Yeah.
seasons under center that they wouldn't consider making a change. I mean, I think that's a fair analysis.
Yeah, Mac Jones looking at it now, he started 42 games. And that was, and keep in mind, like that last season with New England, he was kind of like in and out becoming the star. They kept, flipping it back and forth
So he
between
was
him and
maybe given 35
Bailey
games.
Zappi. Yeah, about maybe 35, somewhere around that. So, with that being said, now with that move happening, Johnson, we'll see what the Patriots season now becomes going into this upcoming week. I mentioned they play the Houston Texans, so not an easy matchup upcoming for them on Sunday in Drake May's first NFL start. But let's now go dive into what happened in week number 5 after all of this breaking news that we had earlier today. And let's start off with the Thursday night game that we had this past week. And it was a thrilling Thursday night game. As I mentioned, probably the best Thursday night game we've had all year, probably in the last couple of years as well, as Tampa Bay went into Atlanta to take on the Falcons in a heated NFC South divisional rivalry. Great back and forth game between these two teams. A lot of offensive numbers as well. Buccaneers went into halftime with a 24-17 lead. They would go into the fourth quarter with that same with a 27-20 lead, and then it was going back and forth in that fourth quarter. Falcons tied the game with a touchdown. The 3 minutes later, the Buccaneers would hold on with a field goal, and for the majority after that field goal, Tampa Bay was on top, and it looked like Atlanta was going to be in trouble. Kirk Cousins threw an interception, which looked like right there and then that looked like that was the dagger for the Falcons in that game. Their defense was able to get a stop, get them the football back, and give Kirk Cousins and company a chance once again to go down the field and kick a game-tying field goal. That would be the case as Younghoe Koo knocked in a 52-yarder, sends the game into overtime, and then in overtime we would see Kirk Cousins get a touchdown pass to Daryl Hodge, who was filling in for Drake London after he got injured the previous play. Hodge gets a great catch and run, 45-yard touchdown reception to end the game in overtime as Atlanta, for the second straight week, gets a walk-off victory and a win over their division rivals. They beat the Buccaneers by the final of 36-30 in this one.
Now, there's one thing I want to mention here, a couple things I want to mention here. When was this game, Nick?
Thursday night.
What the
Prime time.
Thursday night, but what date? What was the date of this game?
It was the 3rd
Of October, right?
October, yeah.
You know what that symbolizes, right? It's the beginning of Kirktober.
October, yeah.
Kirk Cousins has a career quarterback record of 20-0 in October now. And going into this game, he had a passer rating of 98.3 with 11,000 yards, a 2-1 touchdown to interception ratio through 42 games in the month of October in his career. So, Kirktober, we always knew it was going to be Kirk Cousins here. It doesn't matter how we get to the end or how we get there, because we already know the end of this story, that Kirk Cousins was winning this game. And Tampa Bay played a hell of a game. You went into overtime. You saw fighting in the stands in Atlanta.
After the game was over.
After the game was over. So it was clearly a very passionate interconference game. And Kirk Cousins just came out on top.
Think about this for
this is interesting for the Falcons. Yeah, this is interesting for the Falcons because we don't know where we're going to go from here.
Yeah.
Anything is really possible with this team, and that's what makes it so exciting.
What I was going to say is all 5 of their games so far this season have been decided by one score. So they could easily be a team that could be 0-5. They could be a team that could be 5-0, or they could be currently where they're at right now with 3-2. And they certainly have given their fans a little bit of some panic attacks throughout these games they played so far through the first 5 weeks. But hell, after what Kirk Cousins did on Thursday, you got to be very excited for what this is kind of what you were expecting your offense to be looking like going into the season. Cousins throws for 509 yards. Drake London and Mooney both had over 100 yards receiving. Hell, even Kyle Pitts had a pretty good game, 88 yards receiving, his best game of the season. So there's a lot to like if you're this Falcons team offensively wise. And then on the other side of this for Tampa Bay, a well-fought game for them considering the fact that they were out a couple of stars. They were down to, I think, their fifth. They had still Mike Evans and Chris Godwin playing, but they had to go. They had to go to guys like Sterling Shepard off their practice squad to play their slot receiver. He even had a touchdown this game, which was funny as a Giant fan to see that happening. But great offensive game between the two teams, leading to by far the best Thursday night game we've had in a while. And now the Falcons, they jumped themselves into a tie for first place in the NFC South with this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team so far on this early in this regular season. Now, we go into the Sunday slate, and we kind of alluded to this when we were talking about the New York Jets, but let's talk about the Jets game on Sunday, the last game of the Robert Saleh era, as they took on the Minnesota Vikings across the pond in London. And early in this one, Johnson, it was pretty much all Vikings. You know, we saw Andrew Van Ginkel get a pick six to put Minnesota up 10-0 going into the second quarter. They went up 17-0 after a C.J. Ham rushing touchdown. Jets got a touchdown to end the first half thanks to Alan Lazard. Their defense played phenomenal in the second half as well. They kept them alive in this game. We saw Rodgers get a touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson to put them within 3. The Jets would have the football under 3 minutes left to have a chance to go down the field and potentially take the lead in this game. Rodgers throws his 3rd interception of the day, and that would be the dagger in this game. Vikings remain undefeated on the season. They go to 5-0, 23-17 in the final. Back-to-back losses now for the Jets. And of course, as we already mentioned, it leads to a coaching change for New York.
Yeah, this game was over by halftime. Don't let the box score distract you. This was an absolute meltdown from the Jets offense, and the Vikings continue to be disrespected. Going into this game, the Vikings, once again, weren't heavily favored. I mean, the Jets have not been hot all year, and the Vikings were only a 2.5-point favorite, and clearly after one quarter of football, they kind of proved their doubters wrong. Sam Darnold did have a little bit of a health scare. He got hit pretty hard halfway through the game. He did end up returning, though. Nick Mullins came in for a couple of snaps. But is Aaron Rodgers washed up?
Too.
Is Aaron Rodgers washed up? 3 picks now.
It's not looking good. So
that's why I say the allegation shit. That's what I'm going to say.
That's why I say with Saleh, you know, he is pretty much the quintessential scapegoat for what's happening right now with the Jets. But this isn't the first time we've seen this with Rodgers. Because if you think back to it, Rodgers has really not been the same since his last MVP season. You even saw his last season with Green Bay. He was pretty much doing what he's doing right now. A lot of incompletions, a couple of interceptions, and the offense wasn't looking great. And the defense having to try to keep them in those games. And right now, that's exactly happening with the Jets. And that's why, you know, they thought maybe a head coaching change is going to help fix these things. I'm not necessarily sure that's going to be the case. And I don't know realistically where they go from here now. I mean, Rodgers, who knows what his status is going to be at the end of the season. You never know with him. So this could very well be his last season, either in the NFL or just in New York in general. And they have some tough games coming up as well on the schedule. So it won't get easier for the Jets to, you know, ride the ship and fix this. But keep in mind, they're still just a game out of first place in the AFC. So what has looked like a disaster of a season still is it's still within reach for the Jets to potentially make the postseason this year. But they'll have to do it now with a new head coach.
Yeah, that's the craziest part about this. They're 1 game out of first place in the AFC East. So if they win the game against the Bills this upcoming weekend, they're back in first place, which is a crazy statement.
I know. Considering the season they've had, it's really kind of weird to say that. But there's a reason why that's the case, Johnson, and it's kind of what alludes into our next game, the Buffalo Bills taking out the Houston Texans, the Stephon Diggs Bowl, if you want to count it like that. Early on, it was all Houston in this game. They went into the second quarter with a 14-3 lead, a 17-3 lead, then going into halftime. The Bills finally got some things going in the second half. A big, long touchdown pass to Keon Coleman got them back into the scoring. They got within 3 going into the fourth quarter. Both teams would trade. We would see Tyler Bass get a field goal with 3 minutes left to tie the game at 20. And keep in mind, Johnson, before that happened, we saw Josh Allen take a nasty hit that it looked like he had a concussion on the play. It looked like maybe he was going to be taken out of the game because of it. He was able to get cleared and return to the game. I have some thoughts about that once we finish our conversation. But the biggest story from this game was the Bills' clock management towards the end of the game. The Bills having the ball inside their own 5-yard line, pretty much outside the 2-yard line. So they're pretty much into their own end zone. 21 seconds left, or I think it was around 21 seconds left in the fourth quarter. They go with 3 straight passing plays. All 3 were incompletions. It led the Texans to get the football back, and all they needed was 5 yards to put themselves into field goal range for Ka'imi Fairbairn. He knocks in a 59-yard field goal as time expires. and the Texans get their fourth win of the season, 23-20, the final. It's now back-to-back losses for the Bills after a 3-0 start, and a game that, could be could be even different if they had just elected to go to overtime and see if they could win in there.
Yeah, an absolute crazy game from start to finish. Uh, I was giving Josh Allen a lot of compliments at the beginning of this season, towards the beginning of the season, excuse me. My beef with Josh Allen always was that he was a turnover prone quarterback, and for a couple of months now, he's been making me eat crow. He was stepping up to the occasion. He was proving me wrong, and all of a sudden now he's turned back into a pumpkin. So I'm not really sure what the story with that is,
Well, I mean,
but
still,
it has to be
he's
rectified
not.
soon.
He still hasn't thrown an interception, which is good. I mean, he's still not turned the ball over in that statistical category. But I think a big issue for the Bills is that, play calling right now is kind of looking like an issue for them. They're not getting it looks like they're not really calling the correct play calls to try to get them some yards, and it's costing them some downs, which led the Texans in this game. Allen was getting pressured a good amount of times, the same amount that he had pretty much near last week against Baltimore, and it just seems that they're not being consistent enough to win these games. Allen had 21 incompletions, which is definitely not a great sight to see. 9 of 30 in this game. Um, but the Bills' defense is still keeping them in the games, which is a good part for that Bills team. But they need to figure out these issues on offense. And we kind of thought that this would be a little bit of a concern going into the season. No Stephon Diggs. Who's going to be that guy to step up on the wideouts position to be that number one guy for Josh Allen? We necessarily still don't know who that is right now. Maybe it's Khalil Shakir. They didn't have him for this game. We saw Coleman get that one catch, but other than the one catch, he was targeted 5 times and did not have a single reception after that. James Cook had a solid game. They're at least getting a good running game out of him. After last week, he wasn't really able to do anything against the Ravens. But play calling right now for me is a huge issue. McDermott and Joe Brady have to be looked about as to why exactly they made the decision at the end of the game to go for that many pass attempts instead of just going for overtime. I get it; you're trying to avoid a safety to lose the game, and that's in that way. But you can't run that many. You can't run 3 straight pass attempts and have them all get incompleted because it effectively cost the Bills this game and now drops them to 2 straight losses and then a 3-2 mark on the season.
Yeah, it is absolutely way too obvious to keep on having these happen. Um,
Because
you would
McDermott's,
hope.
I would say he's on the hot seat before the season
I
started,
said
and
yeah,
this is
I would say he's on the hot seat. I would definitely agree with you with that.
and a decision making like this is not going to help it. It's going to make it even worse.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
just don't know where you go
I'll tell you now.
if
I'll
you have
tell you
Buffalo
what.
Bills.
If they lose to the Jets on Monday, it's gonna be some bad times right now for Buffalo because this is a team that just fired their head coach. Now they're under new management, and right now everyone's laughing at them for what's going on this season. If the Bills lose to the Jets on Monday, that's 3 straight losses after what looked to be a Super Bowl contending phenomenal start to the season. And it's right now they cannot afford a Jekyll and Hyde start to the year, dropping to 3-3 on Monday night. So they need to assure themselves a victory at MetLife against the Jets. So
This really is
we'll
playing
have
for
to
your
see.
season for the AFC East this early because we expected this to be one of the stronger divisions with Miami, Buffalo, and the New York Jets, and all 3 of those teams are floundering right now.
Right. Dolphins now no Tua. The Bills are starting to struggle right now. The Jets obviously are also struggling right now. And so I don't know. That division right now, with as you mentioned, was thought to be one of the better ones in the NFL, and right now it's not playing like that so far. The way the season has gone, so I guess time is going to tell for the AFC. So we'll see what happens on Monday night. Another game we had this past weekend was a thrilling AFC North divisional rivalry between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot of offense in this game, Johnson, between these two teams, which you kind of expected going into this one. Back and forth affair between Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. It looked like that the Bengals were going to win this game. They had a 10-point lead with under 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. A phenomenal touchdown pass from Lamar Jackson to Isaiah Likely, which still boggles my mind. It says, if you look at the box sheet, it says it's a 6 yard touchdown pass. It was pretty much a 25 yard touchdown pass. Lamar had fumbled the football. He picked it back up. He had the stiff arm defender keep running backwards, and then finally at the very last second threw the ball to the end zone and likely came down with a touchdown. Justin Tucker would hit a 56-yard field goal to tie the game. It would go to overtime, and the Bengals would get the football to start overtime. They got themselves down the field. It looked like, now in my opinion, this is where I was thrown off with this game. Considering how Burrow was doing in this entire game, I thought the Bengals were going to rely on him to try to win them the football game in the end, go for the touchdown and go for the win. But instead, Johnson, they elected to go down the field because and try to win the game that way. I'm sorry, wait. I'm sorry. I misspoke. The Ravens had the ball start overtime. They fumbled. The Bengals got it back. Then they went down the field and they went for the field goal instead of trying to get the touchdown. So my apologies. That's how overtime started. The Bengals would go for the field goal. Evan McPherson lining up for the field goal. A bad snap, bad kick leads to a missed field goal, keeps the game tied. Baltimore goes down the field. They kick the game winner. They get the win in this one, 41-38. So a really disaster for Cincinnati because they could have gotten a huge win to keep their season on track and go to 2-3 in the season. And instead now they fall to 1-4 on the year, and Baltimore now wins their third straight game after an 0-2 start. So season-defining game for both of these teams right now. Baltimore now goes in a 3-game win streak heading into week number 6, and the Bengals now with a 1-4 mark are still trying to find their team identity, but their defense still continues to look very, very bad.
If I was Joe Burrow, I would walk into the owner's office and I'd say, "You're trading me or you're firing Zach Taylor." This guy has 12 touchdowns on the season, 2 interceptions. He's throwing for hundreds of yards each week, and he doesn't have and he's 1 win on the season.
Yeah,
him and the Patriots are pretty much the same organization right now.
The Patriots beat them.
Yeah, you're right. That's embarrassing. So if I was Joe Burrow, I would literally march to the owner's office and say, "You're trading me, or you're firing Zach Taylor because I'm not going to play under these conditions anymore."
It's gotta be Zach Taylor. I've been clamoring this for years now, and I don't want to sound like a old record, but that them making the Super Bowl that one year really kind of hurt them in a sense because it kept Zach Taylor around for a couple more seasons, and it's just not getting any better. Their defense continues to get worse every single season. We now know the situation with Jamar and T. Higgins in terms of contract status. We don't know what there's, where they're going to be next season. Who knows? And you hate to say it like that because Burrow has a phenomenal game. He throws for 390 yards, 5 touchdown passes. Chase had 193 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. But their defense gave up 348 passing yards to Lamar. They gave up 175 rushing yards as a team to the Ravens, including 92 to Derrick Henry. And they just could not stop the Ravens' offense after they had a 10-point lead. And it looked like they were going to get the victory and go to 2-3 and effectively potentially save their season and try to maybe make a wild card at the end of the year. But that's not the case. And now
I still think they can make the playoffs, though. That's the craziest part about all this. They could still make the playoffs.
I mean, they have the talent. You got to think with the talent that they have a chance, but the defense is going to keep pushing them further and further back. And who knows where they now go from here? Now at 1-4, I'd have to look up to see when the last time a 1-4 team made the playoffs, but it's not very often.
What did the Bengals start that one year? Was it 2-3 or 1-4?
It had to be 2-3. The last team that went 1-4 and made the playoffs was the Commanders in 2020, or when they were the Washington football team when they started 1-4 and they won the NFC East, and which was the worst NFC.
So it's been done before.
Division. It's been done 15 times, but
yeah,
it's
doesn't happen often.
It's very, very, very not. It's not highly likely to happen. It's a very sparingly percentage of you making the playoffs after a 1-4 start. And I mean, games for them won't get easier after here because if their defense continues to play like that, they probably have no chance. Unfortunately, Johnson, for you, they'll probably be in this slot to try to take a guy like a Travis Hunter or a Will Johnson to try to get some
secondary help. The last thing Joe Burrow needs is Travis Hunter. as the
I mean, he
last
doesn't
thing.
need a receiver. He just needs a corner.
You're not wrong.
They just need defense.
Travis
People might
Hunter
want to
would
say
fill
it's the
both positions there, even though he won't play both. He'll only play one.
no, yeah. Yeah, we had a very lengthy conversation this week about Travis Hunter in terms of that, and I'm sure once we get towards NFL draft time, we'll talk a little bit more about that. How about another game this week, Johnson, where we saw a collapse happen, and a very surprising one. Maybe not for the fans of this one team, but they've kind of seen this a couple times now, unfortunately, the last couple of years. The Niners with a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, looking like they were going to beat the Arizona Cardinals and get to a 3-2 mark in the season. And then, unfortunately for them, Johnson, they collapse once again with a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. Cardinals go down the field to start the fourth. They get a touchdown to make it a 2-point game. They then go back down the field a little bit later on with about a minute 30 left, kick the go-ahead field goal. Their defense forces an interception on Brock Purdy to end the game, and the Cardinals sneak away with a 24-23 win over the 49ers, as now both teams go to 2-3 in the season, and the Niners' disastrous start to the year continues.
Do you feel bad for the Niners as a Giants fan? Do you feel bad for them, or
No,
do you think it's funny at this point?
no, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I
Which is
mean
also, and speaking of
it is
funny, the
it is
Mets
very rough though.
are. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say that what's also funny is the Mets are now up 7-0 in the seventh inning. They
Yeah,
are
it is
rolling past the
that's
Phillies.
yeah quite unfortunate. For the Philadelphia
But
Phillies, not really.
not really, yeah. But no, as a fan of the Giants, I don't really feel bad for the Niners. There's so much history between those two teams that you can't really feel bad. Um, yes, does it suck that they have this many injuries? Obviously, they've gotten Debo back. Ayuk finally had a big game, so that's very good for them. But their defense is looking really, really bad right now. They lost Hufunga today. He's now out for the rest of the season, I believe. So that's a big loss for their secondary. But I just don't know what the problem is for this team. They have the talent, obviously, on paper to make it to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl, and it's not working. I don't know. There's a good, strong possibility, Johnson. At the end of the season, we might be talking about Kyle Shanahan being the next guy out and being a guy that might be on the
He's
hot
another
seat as
guy that's
well.
been in the hot seat for it feels like 1,000 years.
Yeah.
All
Uh,
these guys feels like, oh yeah, he's on the hot seat. He's on the hot seat.
all I
Feels like
know
every
is
guy
that
we talk to or talk about is on the hot seat.
the two teams that I picked to make the Super Bowl, one's already fired their head coach, and one has blown multiple double-digit leads so far this season. So I must have some crazy mushing effects for the NFL, and it showed earlier on this season for our mushing hour picks. Thankfully for us, it's gotten a lot better the last
Some
couple
would
of weeks. So
say it's mush magic, but that's what you have.
some might say that, but it has gotten better for us the last couple of weeks. So we'll break that down in just a little bit. We do have two more games to recap before we head into the mushing hour. How about the Sunday night game that we had this past Sunday, and a game that turned into from Sunday night to Monday morning, as we had the Dallas Cowboys take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Game was delayed about an hour and a half, if I remember correctly, due to a lightning delay. So a long delay leads to these teams having to wait till 9:30 to kick it off. Finally, the game was kicked off, and kind of what we expected in the first half, a very low-scoring game. The Cowboys went into halftime with a 6-3 lead. First touchdown of the game came for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the third quarter. They would take a 10-6 lead going into the fourth, and that's where we kind of saw a little bit more offensive firepower between the two teams, a little bit more back and forth. Cowboys started the fourth quarter with a touchdown to take the lead. The Steelers were getting a touchdown with under 5 minutes left to regain the lead, and then it set up a great way to end this game between these two teams. Cowboys had fourth and goal from the 3-yard line with 20 seconds left. Dak Prescott throws a touchdown pass to Jalen Tolbert for the go-ahead score and the game-winning score as the Cowboys hang on late to beat the Steelers 20-17. Both teams now go to a 3-2 mark on the season as it's now back-to-back loss for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and for the millions of people on the East Coast that have to work for a living, you did not see a majority of this game because there was a rain delay that kept this game from starting to pretty much kept it going to the wee hours of the early
It ended
morning.
just
So
at 1 a.m.
yeah, it was quite ridiculous. But Dak Prescott performing under pressure. I think this is really the first time in his career that we could say, hey, he really stepped up when he needed to because uh, there's so many times where Dak has choked in the playoffs, he's choked in big games, he's choked leads away, and this is a come from behind victory against what would be, if not the top defense in the league,
Yeah.
which is incredible. And now Justin Fields has a 6% winning percentage when his defense gives up more than 20 points in a game. 6%.
Do you want to hear a funny stat about Dak?
Sure.
He might be the first quarterback in NFL history to throw an interception on 2 different days.
Yeah, you
Think,
know what?
think, think
Yeah.
about it. He threw one before it struck midnight, and he threw one
And then
after it
the
struck midnight.
yeah, so hold on. That we're gonna need checkers of that. So maybe next week we can get that.
I think it is that definitely hasn't. I don't think that's ever been done before.
I
So
wouldn't fight you on that because there's only been so many predicaments like this, and there's not that many multi-interception games. So
yeah.
I would believe you on this.
Hey, but listen, he threw 2 picks, and still, yet nonetheless, the Cowboys defense did a good job of
Patrick Mahomes special.
keep right. They kept the game intact, and they were able to get Dak a touchdown to end the game and win it for them. And it's a big win considering the fact that every other NFC East team won this past Sunday, so they really needed that victory to avoid them potentially being in a tie for last place with the Giants. So that's a good thing for Dallas, obviously not for me as well, but I digress. Last game of our slate, we had the Monday night game last night between the New Orleans Saints and the Kansas City Chiefs. Not a lot much, happened in this game. We saw the Chiefs strike early. Kareem Hunt got a touchdown. We saw the Saints would respond back a little bit later on after they were down 10-0. Rashid Shaheed gets a touchdown to make it 10-7. Chiefs go into the halftime lead with a 16-7 lead. Fourth quarter was where we saw a little bit of some action going on. We saw Foster Moreau get a touchdown to put the Saints within 3. Then the Chiefs kind of pulled away from this game. Xavier Worthy puts them up 10. Then we saw Derek Carr get injured late in the game. That would take him out of the game. And that would pretty much effectively end this one for the Saints. They fall in this one 26-13 for the Chiefs. Chiefs now go to 5-0 in the season. They are now one of the remaining 2 lone teams in the NFL with the undefeated record with the Minnesota Vikings. And now for the Saints, after what looked to be a changing of the guard for them this season, Johnson, where they started 2-0, they've now lost 3 straight games, and they now looks like they have lost their starting quarterback Derek Carr for a couple weeks now.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler is one of the names being floated around the beef of replacing quarterback for Derek Carr. And can we talk about the downfall of Patrick Mahomes? Because I've been trying to say this for the last 22 games now, or at least that he's been starting. Uh, can you remember a drop off from a quarterback of his prestige uh, season over from 2 seasons ago? This guy was throwing for 40, 50 touchdowns a season. Not last season, but 2 seasons ago. And now he's got 6 picks and he's got 6 touchdowns through 5 games. It's a career low passer rating. It's career low yards per game, career low in touchdowns through week 5, career high interceptions through week 5, uh, career high in interception ratio and and career low and passer and touchdown percentage. Excuse me. I just don't see how. I mean, he's been really been carried by his defense, and the criticism has not been loud enough for Patrick Mahomes. And remember, he got a couple of like a of callbacks on like obvious interceptions he threw this season that got called back. So if those don't happen, he's looking at maybe 7, 8 picks this year through 5 games. Can we please talk about this? Was it Tyreek Hill? Was it prime Travis Kelsey? I mean, I want your honest opinion on this, Nick.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously having Tyreek Hill and Kelsey, who had a good game on Monday. I mean, probably the best game he's had all season by far. But it definitely helps any quarterback to have. I mean, look what happened with Tua, because Tua, his rookie year, was playing horrifically, and then they add Waddle and Hill, and he becomes, he's throwing touchdowns galore and near pretty much 4,000 passing yards each season. Now, for Mahomes, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He has had a bad start to the season, but I mentioned this last year for them too. He didn't look great, but the defense was a big factor into the Chiefs getting to where they were in the season and them winning the Super Bowl last year. And right now, that's still the same way. I mean, their defense is playing phenomenal once again. They're still
Oh, it's still have a defense
undefeated.
this year. I got to give him credit where credit's due. They have a phenomenal defense this year.
Shout out Steve Spagnuolo, one of my favorite guys, because obviously from the Giants days where he was the defensive coordinator for their 2 Super Bowls. But um, I'm not going to sugarcoat. Mahomes has played bad, and he will definitely admit that he hasn't played great. But it hasn't been really talked about much because the Chiefs are still undefeated. So it's as if they were in a spot where they were maybe 3-2, 2-3, then you would be talking about it a little bit more. But because they're still 5 and they're still undefeated, that's why it's not getting talked about much. And you're getting teams like the Jets and other teams like the Bills or whatever, and being like, "Up, sky is falling." The Niners are losing games where they're up 10 points. The sky is falling. Everything's done. We need a change of scenery or whatever. We need help, and you just don't hear that with the Chiefs because they just continue to dominate, either whether it's the offense cooking or it's the defense cooking.
And the refs cooking too. Don't forget about that.
Well, that's another story for a different day.
There's at least 2 games. They should, at best, the Chiefs should have 3 wins this year. That's what I'll say.
Like I said, you're probably not wrong. I'm not gonna comment on it, but regardless, it's as long as the Chiefs remain where they are right now, record wise, they're not many people are really going to talk about his stats right now because they're just still winning games, and that's pretty much all you can really talk about at the end of the day. So I don't know. But I do think, Johnson, with that being said, it's going to lead us now in to week number 6, and it's our mushing hour. And like I say, don't let us get hot right now, Johnson. Do not let us get hot. You have been on fire as of late. I believe 12-1 the last 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
And I'm 14-7, so I will take that as well. We're getting back on track. Our records are looking way better than we did at the beginning of the season. You are now 22-14 on the year. I am 21-24. It's due in large part of me taking double picks, so that's why the record looks like that. But we are making progress now heading into week number 6 of the NFL season. And it all begins on Thursday night, Johnson, after a thrilling Thursday night game last week. Let's see if we have it again this week as the San Francisco 49ers head into Seattle to take on the Seattle Seahawks. The Niners go into this game as a 3.5-point road favorite with the over-under set at 47.5.
Give me 49ers minus 3.5. I don't know why I'm picking this. Niners fans, they travel well. It's not like they're going cross country for this game. It's a primetime game. Give me 49ers.
Well, the Niners fans travel well, but we know the Seahawks fans are certainly some of the best in the NFL.
They were a lot better 10 years ago. They're still good, but it's not like it's the 12th man. Like when they had the Legion of Boom, when they were in their prime, they traveled really well, but not as much. They still travel well, but not as well.
I don't know how to feel about this game entirely. These are 2 teams that right now are struggling. The Niners are 2-3, coming off a really bad loss to the Cardinals. And the Seahawks are also coming off a bad loss to the Giants. And that game against the Giants, their offensive line struggled. They could not stop. They had no pressure realistically on the Giants' offensive line. And the Giants didn't even have Malik Neighbors in that game. And they still won by 9 points. So there's definitely a lot of concern on both sides of the ball for these 2 teams. If I had to pick between the 2 teams heading into Thursday, I probably lean towards the Niners. I really can't see a scenario where they fall to 2-4 on the year. So I'm going to go with San Francisco minus 3.5, minus 2.5. I'm going to go with a little bit of an alternate spread just to ensure that if they win by a field goal, that I don't get screwed by that half point. So I'm going to go with San Francisco minus 2.5 on Thursday night. Johnson, what's our first game of the Sunday slate?
We have another game in London, and I want to apologize to the citizens of the United Kingdom and the men and women who live in London that will be going to this game. If you're traveling in Europe, do not travel for this game. We have the Jacksonville Jaguars 1-4 versus the Chicago Bears, technically the home team because Roger Goodell. Chicago Bears are a 2.5-point favorite over underslated at 44.5. Give me Bears minus 2.5 because they have a hotter team right now. The Jags defense isn't good. And at least Caleb Williams is a proven quarterback against bad defenses. Not against good defenses, but it seems like he can cook bad ones. So give me
The way
Bears
you
minus two
started
and a
that
half.
sentence, I was getting a lot stunned by how you started that statement.
Yeah, no, he's only proven against bad defenses. I mean, he's had a couple the good games he had. The Colts, probably one of the worst defenses in the league, and the Panthers, also one of the worst defenses in the league. So when he goes further into when he plays the Vikings a couple times, then you'll really see what he's made of, because he's only really played the games he's played bad against are against good defenses, or at least decent defenses, and these good games are against bad defenses. So we'll see what he's made of in a couple weeks.
Well, all that being said, I will also go with the Bears in this one, -2.5. It comes down to the defenses in this game. The Bears by far have the better defense between the two. And I think we get another good game out of Caleb Williams in this one. You mentioned the Jaguars defense has not been great, and it showed on Sunday. They almost blew that game against the Colts. Um, but the Bears are looked really good. I think this is the spot in the season where the Bears are trying to prove to the NFL world that they are really potentially going to be a potential wild card team at the end of the season. And if they wanted that to be the case, they got to win games like this against a team that's 1-4. So I will also go with the Bears -2.5. So keep in mind, folks, that is a complete mush. So you most likely want to take Jaguars +2.5 going into week number 6. Now, heading into week number 6, we also have another big pivotal game between two former Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, Johnson, as the Washington Commanders head into Baltimore to take on the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are a big time favorite in this game, -6.5. The over under set at 52.5 for this one.
Give me Commanders +6 in this, or +6.5. Excuse me. The Ravens seem to find themselves in close games week after week, and the Commanders keep on, I guess, proving people wrong. This is going to be Jade Daniels' really big test, because the Ravens are one of the best defenses in the
By
league.
far the
So
best defense is going to be playing all year.
yeah, so I'm kind of interested to see what he could do here. I think on the ground he'll be okay, but passing maybe not so much. So give me Commanders +6.5.
Yeah, he kind of had his first come to earth game this past week against the Browns, and he still had a pretty good game in that game, albeit there was a weird interception that probably should not have been an interception in that one. But he still ran for 80 yards. He still had a pretty good game. Jane Daniels did. My concern with this game is going to be Washington's defense. They've looked really good the last couple weeks, but now you're facing this Baltimore team, and I feel like you're going to see the Commanders' defense that we saw the first 3 weeks of the season. So that's where I maybe see why the community and the betting makers are putting this as a high spread for Baltimore in this one. So for that reason, I'm gonna go with the Commanders +10, and I will go with the over as well. I do think there will be a good amount of points scored. Hell, wouldn't be surprised if Baltimore puts up a good amount and they win by a final of, let's say, I don't know, 33-23 the final. I could see that very much well happening. I push, but I could see a lot of points being scored between the two teams. So I like the Commanders +10. And you know what? I've talked myself out of it, Johnson. Give me Ravens -6.5 and the over. Now that I talked about it more, I don't know if I trust Washington
All
against the
right.
defense.
With
So
that being said, let's
let's go to
move
the
into
next
our
game.
next game.
Let's go to the
Yeah,
next game.
we got the Detroit Lions going into Jerry World to take on the Cowboys. Lions, despite being on the road, they are a 3.5 point favorite. Over under slate at 52.5. Cowboys are at home cooking. Give me Cowboys +3.5 here. I think it's an easy one.
You think it's an easy one? Wow.
I think that's not an easy win, but I think it's an easy cover.
I mean, they could lose by a field goal, and we saw last year what happened with these two games. The infamous ineligible receiver not being cleared from the referees. So, if you're a Lion fan, you probably have PTSD going into this game. And you're hoping that some instance like that does not happen again. But being that the case, I will go with the Detroit Lions -3.5 in this one. I just think on paper they are the better team than Dallas. And they're coming off a bye week as well, so they're pretty much well rested. Cowboys are coming off a very tough physical game against the Steelers this past Sunday, so we'll have to see what it entails for them. I don't really like this matchup for them in terms of their defense, so I think Detroit gets the win this upcoming Sunday. Now, Johnson, for me, a very interesting game on Sunday night. As the Cincinnati Bengals head into MetLife Stadium to take on the New York Giants on Sunday Night Football. Bengals go into this game as a road favorite, minus 3.5. Over under set at 48.5.
Oh boy, this is an interesting one. Give me Big Blue Wrecking Crew
Oh,
plus three and
no.
a half here. I'm taking Giants to cover, but the Bengals are going to win. Giants
You
to
really,
cover, Bengals to win.
I mean, I don't know how to feel because the Giants are 2-3 and could very well be 3-2. Hell, it could be 4-1 if they beat Dallas. So they're in a weird season this year. The Bengals, we know what's going on with them. But I think the way after how Burrow spoke after their last game, it's probably going to light a fire under the Bengals. And unfortunately, it's a wrong week for the Giants to be playing this team because I feel like the Bengals are going to be very motivated to play this one. I just don't see how the Giants could be able to stop both Jamar Chase and T Higgins in this one. I'm hoping maybe the Giants can sneak out the win and surprise me, but I'm going to go with the Bengals minus 3.5 in this one. Hopefully, I got proven wrong, but I think Cincinnati has got just too much offensive firepower for the Giants to keep back and forth in this game. But Johnson, as we know, that's not the only primetime game that's going to be happening at MetLife Stadium this week.
No, because the very next night on Monday Night Football, it is the battle for the AFC East. We have the Buffalo Bills going into MetLife Stadium to take on the New York Jets. Bills are a 2.5 point favorite despite being the road team, and the over/under slate for 40.5. I was gonna take Jets plus 2.5. Just give me the over here.
The
I think
over,
these two.
okay.
I think these two teams can get 21 points apiece. So, give me the over.
I think it's possible. I mean, they're also these are two of the better defenses in the NFL too. So this game could go either way. I think when it comes down to it. We saw what happened the last time they played on Monday Night Football last season. The Jets winning that game on a punt return in overtime, and that was where Aaron Rodgers got injured 4 snaps into the season. But as we know, this is pretty much a do or die game for both the teams. The Bills have lost 2 straight. The Jets just fired Salah, so now they're trying to end their 2 game skid and go back to 500. I realistically don't know what happens from here. Whoever loses this game, what's going to be their next, evasive action and try to avoid, whether it's going to be Buffalo going to 3-3 or the Jets going to 2-4. I think for me, looking at it, I'm probably going to lean with the Bills minus 2.5. I'm still concerned about the Jets' offense right now, and I feel like Rodgers is going to throw a pick or two in this game. So if I really would, I don't want to put it on my sheet, but I'd be consider putting Aaron Rodgers over zero point 0.5 interceptions in this game. I do think he throws an interception against his Bills
I'll allow
defense,
it if you
but
want to put that as a pick. I'll allow it.
I'm not going
Not
to because
traditional, but I'll allow.
it's
I'll even
very
give you
not,
two. I'll give you 2-1 on that because it's such a long shot.
I'm not going to do it. If it happens though, I'm going to regret it, but I think the Bills. I think they I think they bounce back. They end their skid with the win, and the Jets. It's going to be a little bit of time. New head coach. He doesn't really transition right off the rip most of the time in the NFL. Um, but considering that the week after they're going to be playing the Steelers on Sunday Night Football, I think that's the game where you probably see them start to pick up some steam. And we'll speak about that game next week, obviously on the show in the Mushing Hour. But I think for now, facing Josh Allen and this crew, the only concern is going to be is Josh Allen, healthy enough after that concussion scare he had on Sunday. If not, who knows? I think the Bills still got the win. I think he'll be ready to play, and Buffalo comes out on top on Monday Night Football and goes to 4-2 on the season. But that's going to do it for this week's Mushing Hour, Johnson. Any final thoughts before we head into week number 6? I know you have a new quarterback playing this week, so are you at least excited about it?
Sure. I hope he's good. I hope Drake May throws 50 touchdowns and 0 interceptions for the next 10 games, and I hope he goes 0-10 in those games. That's what I hope
I was just
happens.
going to say, but you hope the Patriots lose every single one of those games.
Absolutely. That's my
Yeah.
summary.
Well, as a Giants fan, seeing a primetime game on the schedule never makes me feel any better about this team. Who knows? Maybe they surprise me. Maybe they beat the Bengals and continue the Zach. Maybe we continue the agenda of Zach Taylor getting fired at the end of the season, or maybe even mid-season, considering what we saw earlier today. So we'll have to see what happens, and we'll see what happens going into week number 7 next week when we recap week number 6 in the National Football League. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. A wild week number 5 in the National Football League. Also breaking news as well today. Jets now have a new head coach as Robert Saleh has been fired. Patriots now have a new quarterback as Drake May has been named the starter. A new quarterback as well in New Orleans as Derek Carr is out for a few weeks. And a lot more to entail. Great games that happened Thursday, a great couple of games on Sunday, and now we head into week number 6 with a lot more jam-packed action. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside with Andrew Johnson for the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week and enjoy your NFL Sunday.